If you're feeling like you want more emotional intimacy, it's not something that you're asking your partner to deliver to you. It's like we got to work together as a team so that we are both feeling closer to each other. Hello and welcome to the Pillow Talks podcast. We're your hosts, Vanessa
and Xander Marin.
I'm a sex therapist with over 20 years of experience.
And I'm just a regular dude. We share the ups and downs in our relationship while giving you step-by-step techniques for improving yours.
Make sure you subscribe for your weekly double date full of totally doable sex tips, practical relationship advice, hilarious and honest stories of what really goes on behind closed bedroom doors, and so much more. It's the sex education you wish you'd had. Today, we are talking all about intimacy. Actually, we're doing something special that I'm not sure we've ever done before. We're making sister episodes, like 2 back-to-back episodes about some deeply entwined topics.
Siblings, eh?
Siblings, sister episodes. We think of intimacy as 2 sides to the same coin. I'm doing all my metaphors today.
Twin
Sisters,
flames.
Twin flames, the coin. We think of it as emotional intimacy and physical intimacy.
Would you say it's two-faced?
What?
No, I wouldn't say that because I think two-faced has a negative connotation.
Yeah. 2 sides of the same coin.
2 sides of the same face, but not two-faced.
So today we are going to talk all about emotional intimacy, and next week we're going to talk about physical intimacy.
Because you can't have one without the other.
We don't think you can. We also think that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There are people who want to have emotional intimacy before they have physical intimacy. Mm-hmm. And there are people who want to have physical intimacy as a means of creating emotional intimacy. So like, I want to feel connected before we have sex versus, but the way that I feel connected is by having sex. And of course, most relationships are usually made of one of each type. So you have that classic standoff between partners.
Got to keep it interesting.
Yeah. You're like, well, but I want the emotional intimacy first. Well, I want the sex first.
Life would be way too boring if we all just wanted the exact same thing at the same time.
I guess that's
maybe it
one
would
way
be
of looking at
convenient, but it would be pretty boring.
So we made these 2 episodes that we're going to have back to back. Today, we're talking all about what to do if you want more emotional intimacy in your relationship. And next week will be what to do if you want more physical intimacy. So we highly recommend listening to both. Both are going to be equally important. But today, we're going to get started with emotional intimacy. We're going to talk about what it actually is, how to know if you need more of it, how to talk to your partner about creating more emotional intimacy, and even what to do if your partner doesn't understand. It's like, wait, emotional intimacy? What do you mean? I don't get it.
And if you're already excited about the prospect of these 2 sibling episodes, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating and short little review. Those reviews go such a long way in helping get our podcast in front of more people. Super easy to leave a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. Just click to go to the main Pillow Talks podcast page, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see the review and rating section. Just smash those 5 stars and leave us a couple sentences on what you love about this podcast. In fact, if you leave a review, we'll enter you every week into our Review of the Week giveaway. That's just how important reviews are to us and how much we want to thank you for leaving us a review. And that means if you hear your review read, reach out to us on Instagram or email us at info@vmtherapy.com and we will give you a free masterclass. So without any further ado, Relationships 101, a lifesaver for college love. I'm navigating my first serious relationship while juggling college life. It felt like a roller coaster, and I was desperately seeking guidance. Enter Pillow Talks. This podcast quickly became my go-to resource for all things relationships, saving me from countless rookie mistakes. Each episode tackles real-world issues with genuine empathy and expert advice. Vanessa and Xander break down complex topics into relatable, easy-to-digest conversations. They blend personal anecdotes with professional insights, making each episode both informative and comforting. If you're in your early 20s and new to the serious relationship scene, this podcast is a treasure trove of wisdom. It's like having a wise friend who's been through it all, guiding you through the highs and lows of all things love, sex, and relationships. Highly recommend.
Oh, that's such a sweet review.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, Relationships 101 honestly is like a class that we need to take like in high school. And of course, nobody ever offers that. I doubt that will ever be something that is actually offered. But like, yeah, I love to think of what we do as really providing that kind of Relationship 101 type of experience. The thing that most people don't think they need until they realize, oh, wait, I am missing a lot of key information.
Well, I think these episodes really fit in with that theme too. Like stuff that we should have learned at some point, but we never really do. And then it feels awkward and uncomfortable and we don't know what's going on. So let's keep rolling and talking about emotional intimacy.
Yeah. So what the heck even is emotional intimacy and why is it so important? I mean, the first thing that got me thinking of what you were saying of like, how this ties in with that Relationships 101, that just brought this like flashback of, me going through my later teenage years and starting to become sexually active. And like, you don't really think about the emotional intimacy part of sex so much. It's kind of like, at least for me, it was just like, I want to be able to experience this. Like, I want to like round the bases. I don't want to be like behind my friends or, all that kind of stuff. You're so focused on like getting to this point of being able to have sex. For me, I wasn't really ever thinking about like, what is it that I am looking for from an emotional intimacy perspective? And I think like early on in most of our sexual careers, or at least those of us that don't wait to be in a serious
relationship. I love how you always say sexual career. Like, what do you mean a career?
Well, I don't know. I guess I think
Are you getting promotions?
It's an amateur career. I'm an amateur.
What degree did you get in college to prepare you for this career?
Definitely nothing I took. You know what? That's funny. I don't really even think about saying that because I'm thinking of like sexual debut, which is another term that we say.
Yeah, instead of losing your virginity, making your sexual debut.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, something about being like, since I was sexually active, just sounds very formal.
Sexual career.
So, so I've completely lost my train of thought. But, okay, no. What I was saying is for those of us who don't wait for marriage or don't wait for a serious relationship, I think that there's very much, a rushing to the physical intimacy. Because it's just it's something that we want. And then later on, you start to realize the importance of that emotional intimacy. I know what that was like for me.
I mean, I think you're just describing boys and men. I would not describe my sexual career in the same way.
All right. Well,
I was looking for that emotional intimacy right out the gate. That was more important to me.
Okay. Well, yeah, and different experiences.
Which is kind of funny because we are the reverse now.
Yeah, that is very funny. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at was that it was like...
That is very funny. With zero laugh.
No, that's interesting.
Okay, there you go.
That is really interesting. That's what I was thinking. That's super interesting because, yeah, for me, it really did switch. I mean, I think that, my experience was that having a number of, not serious sexual experiences, I came away from those not feeling super great about myself. Not like horrible about myself, but just like, realizing, oh, something is missing here. Mm-hmm. Like it feels really exciting in the lead up to it and doing it. And then afterwards, there's this emotional disconnect. Because it's like, ooh, that is something that actually felt really intimate, but I don't feel very intimate with this person. Mm-hmm. And so, then contrasting that with getting into a serious relationship and having sex, and it's like, oh, there's this whole different layer to it. Like, okay, this is the missing piece. And then I think for me, eventually, I started to realize, oh yeah, like I really need that emotional intimacy in order to be like all in with the sex.
Okay, so let's back it up and talk about like what is emotional intimacy to begin with. Because I think a lot of us feel the desire for more intimacy. Like I think if you went up to your average person and said, hey, do you want more intimacy in your relationship? 99 people out of 100 would say, yes, I do. But then if you ask them, like, what does that mean to you? I think most people would really struggle to describe it. They're like, intimacy is one of those things that you know it when you feel it, and you know when you're not feeling it, but it's also hard to nail down the specifics of it.
Yeah, if people could, then barely anyone would be like, oh yeah, I want more of that. They'd just be like doing the thing that they know would get it.
Mm-hmm. So here's our attempt at defining emotional intimacy. I think of it as the feeling of being truly seen, understood, and accepted, and feeling the ability to be authentic and vulnerable without fear of judgment. Just this closeness that you feel with your partner. What do you think of it as?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this 100%. And in fact, hearing you read those things really kind of like reminded me perhaps why I became more of an emotional intimacy first kind of person fairly quickly. Because, I'm sure everybody struggles with this, but I think if I reflect on my childhood and teenage years, I think some of my core struggles were like really wanting to be like seen and accepted socially, and and having a lot of fear of judgment, and then therefore feeling like, well, it's not safe to be particularly vulnerable if you are trying to, be accepted by people, or you don't want to be judged by people because you think that's going to help you be more accepted by people. And so I think that once I found, emotional intimacy in a serious relationship, it was like this pressure release. Oh, okay, where I finally have an outlet to be able to feel totally safe and seen and understood in a way that I hadn't before. And so, yeah, I think that I'm not surprised when I hear you say that about like, oh yeah, no wonder I like flip-flopped into really wanting to feel safe emotionally before I have sex.
Yeah, I think of emotional intimacy as I don't have to play any roles with you. I don't have to wear any masks around you. I can just be my full self. And even though there are parts of me that might annoy you or characteristics that maybe you wish were a little bit different, there's still this like underlying level of acceptance. Like I see you and I love you exactly as you are.
Yeah.
But let's make this a little bit more practical and talk about like what are like daily ways that you can see emotional intimacy. So I think deep, meaningful conversations is one where it feels like, you're talking about things that really matter, not just, oh, what's the schedule today and what's the weather going to be like and don't forget to do this.
But then again, I do want to say with that, because I think a lot of people, a lot of men especially, hear the word deep conversations and are immediately jumped literally into the deep end or to the extreme end. And it's like, oh, you want me to talk about like, what my deepest, darkest fear is. And I think, we can talk a little bit more about this, but like deep and meaningful conversations aren't necessarily like, oh, are you scared of death, or are you, I'm trying to think of like, your deepest, darkest trauma. It's just like stuff that is not superficial stuff. That how are you feeling about X, Y, or Z that happened today?
Well, yeah, on the other end of it, I also think there's something about being able to have comfortable silences together, like feeling like you don't have to jump to fill the space or say something just to say something. It's like we can also just be quiet together and it still feels like we're connected. For me, another big piece of it is like being able to show a full range of emotions. So, all different, positive and negative emotions that come up. But I do think in particular, it's like being able to talk about fears and anxieties without feeling like there's going to be judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these two, the sort of like being able to show a full range of emotion and sharing fears without judgment, those are two things I think that are key to having some of those deep and meaningful conversations. It's like, it's not about like talking about some horrible thing that happened to you. It's about being able to have a conversation about any kind of topic where you are able to show and express a range of emotion, or express, oh God, that got me thinking about this thing that I'm scared of or anxious about, or this thing that happened to me. Where, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's not like completely bearing your soul constantly, but like any sort of conversation that allows you to kind of traverse in the positive and sort of negative emotional spectrum. Like, yeah, I feel like negative isn't really the right way. I'm not saying like emotions are negative, but like, kind of stuff that's in the more like happy, positive realm of emotions, but also in the more challenging realm.
You're here listening to this podcast, so we know you are into aural entertainment.
Aural.
Aural. A-U-R-A-L. That's ear-related entertainment.
Aural.
If you're looking to get even spicier than what we cover on Pillow Talks, then we have just the thing for you. Dipsea. Dipsea is the female-founded app for spicy audiobooks and more, created by women for women. Their app has over 1,000 spicy audiobooks, all crafted by a team of professional writers and top-tier narrators. Whether you're looking for a rugged cowboy or a Scottish sailor, fae royalty, or the god of the underworld, you will find characters you love on Dipsea. With their easy-to-explore app, you can search for your favorite romance genres like contemporary, historical, dark, sports, western, romantasy, sapphic, and more. New chapters are released every week, so you'll always find something new for your oral pleasure. Okay, so for listeners of the show, Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial, a free trial. When you go to dipseastories.com/pillow, that's 30 days of full access for free. When you go to dipseastories.com/pillow, dipseastories.com/pillow.
Okay, another one that doesn't, for this is a great one for people that are like, oh God, deep, meaningful conversations. This is above my pay grade. Here's another one. It's just like
back to the career. What's your salary, your sexual salary?
What is my sexual salary?
I don't know.
How many
You've been doing it
sexies
for
do I
free
earn?
for a long time.
Yeah, I know. I've been an
I'm not
amateur.
really tempted to pay you now.
I think I got to go pro. Who's going to sponsor me? We have podcast sponsors, but we don't have any sexuality sponsors. Xander's sexuality sponsors. Who's going to jump in?
Sex.
Yeah. Come on, put me on your team. Put me on your sex team.
This is getting really weird.
This is getting weird.
Go back to the content.
All right, so here's another one, especially for those of you that want to kind of wade into the deep end with the deep conversations. Wanting to share news with your partner first. I think this is a big one where it's just like, hey, when something important happens, when something exciting happens, like sharing that with your partner before you share it with anybody else. And the reason for this is because you are probably most likely to have the most authentic, like emotional reaction when you share interesting, exciting, sad, scary news with the first person. Like if you've already shared some exciting thing with 5 other people before you tell your partner, they're probably going to get a kind of watered down reaction from you, right? And so like this is a great way to ensure that you are actually like sharing something in a meaningful way where they're getting like your full emotional range. Noticing your partner's mood changes, that is another kind of daily example of emotional intimacy. So, I think it's not just noticing and keeping it to yourself, but like noticing,
Yes,
noticing
obviously.
and commenting
Checking
and
in.
Yeah, checking in, not like, oh God, you sound angry, or like, oh, sounds like you're having a bad day, but like, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z, like, what's coming up for you? What's going on? Like, can we, I'm here for you. So, stuff like that, like checking in on your partner, not like, oh God, you're angry again.
This sounds like a scary example. You're angry again.
Oh, you're grumpy. And then finally, inside jokes and, like shared meanings for things. I think that can be a really big one because it's like, we all have the, the memories of like, early on in friendships, like having inside jokes and that feeling like, oh my God, like we have a kind of like secret together, or like I feel part of. And I think having that within your relationship is a way to really just like feel much closer. And also to be able to like laugh about things on a daily basis and, kind of like have more meaning or, kind of symbology in your relationship.
Okay, so if you're listening to this episode, it's probably because, like the title, you're wanting more emotional intimacy in your relationship. But we also wanted to share some signs that you might need more emotional intimacy. For me, the biggest one that comes up is you feel lonely even when you're together.
Ooh.
And I think that's one of the saddest things that happens in a relationship. Like, you're choosing to spend your life with somebody, but you are feeling invisible to each other. I mean, there's nothing worse than feeling lonely when you're in a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, because it's literally the antithesis to being in a relationship. Like, we get into relationships so that we have companionship, so that we don't feel lonely. And that's not to say that you can never feel lonely in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I think that it is normal and healthy and okay to sometimes have feelings of loneliness. But if you are feeling, regularly lonely in your relationship, that is definitely a sign that you either need to work on emotional intimacy, or if you are not able to, or your partner is not willing to, that like this isn't something that's going to change, and you deserve to be able to be with someone where you feel seen and part of, and not lonely constantly.
Similarly, like, you feel like you're sharing the same space, but you're not actually there with each other.
This kind of reminds me of the like roommates rather than romantic partners thing, where it's like when you've lived with a roommate for a while, like, you can absolutely share the space and maybe even be sitting on the same couch together. But like, it can kind of feel like you are also on your own. It's like, oh yeah, this is a person. We both live here. We both do things here. And, we're not like constantly like, doing the same thing together.
Mm-hmm. You feel like your partner doesn't really get you. Feel like unseen by your partner. They don't really like know who you are, or understand like how you operate.
And I mean, that's a normal thing very early on in a relationship. But yeah, if you are, you've been together for years, you're married, these are not great signs. This is a sign that either, you kind of like didn't lay the groundwork from an early stage, or that you guys have both been changing and you haven't really been, paying attention to the changes that you're going through. You haven't really put the effort in to get to know who the people are that you are becoming.
And also, conversations stay surface level. We've talked a lot already about conversations, but yeah, if you just feel like, you're talking about random ass crap,
yeah,
you might need a little more emotional intimacy.
Oh, definitely. And also, if you find yourself keeping thoughts and feelings to yourself, that's definitely a sign that you don't feel comfortable sharing them with a partner. So you don't have that vulnerability, that space for vulnerability. Another big sign, which I know is a gut punch to a lot of people, you spend more time on your phones than with each other.
Ooh.
I think this is a increasingly common one. And this, I'm not going to say, hey, if this is going on in your relationship right now, like you're doomed. I do think, though, this is something to be aware of. This is what may be the first place to look if you are struggling in this area. Because behavior with our phones is a quasi like addictive type of behavior. And it's like so easy once we get into that pattern where it's like, okay, we're both doing this thing. We both feel comfortable with it. It's acceptable that we're doing it. And I, am learning to feel comfort in like my phone rather than getting comfort from my partner. So I think this is a great first step of like, okay, if this is happening, it's probably time to break that habit. And just the practice of like, hey, let's put the phone down and do something together is probably going to be like a hugely meaningful first step, really move the needle a lot. And then finally, if you find yourself regularly feeling disconnected during sex, I think that is a really big one because, with the proper amount of emotional intimacy, sex is going to be something that really turbocharges that emotional intimacy. If you're finding that not only do you not feel connected, you actually feel disconnected when you're doing it, there's definitely very much something missing there.
The holiday season is tough on skin. Cold weather, stuffy indoor heating, nonstop festivities can lead to a dull, dehydrated complexion. That's where today's sponsor, OneSkin, comes in. Their scientifically proven products are designed to support your skin at the cellular level, so it looks and feels healthy and holiday ready. Founded by an all-woman team of scientists, OneSkin focuses on skin longevity, not just surface-level improvements. It's all thanks to their proprietary OS01 peptide, the first of its kind to switch off the cells that cause skin to become more vulnerable. Don't just take my word for it. OneSkin has over 6,300 five-star reviews for their moisturizers, cleanser, and sunscreen. For a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using code PILLOW when you check out at oneskin.co. This holiday season, invest in your skin's long-term health because healthy skin is a gift. So if you follow us on Instagram, you have probably seen me talk about skincare. It's one of my secret obsessions. I love it so much. And I was really excited when OneSkin reached out to us to be a podcast sponsor. Like with all of our sponsors, I asked to try the product first, and I was so pleased by it. I love that their range is extremely simple. It's not like 15 different serums and this like 12-step method. Like their products are just extremely targeted and very efficient. This is like real deal skincare. It's not fluffy, like overly scented, like meant to just be fun and make you feel like you're doing some weird little self-care ritual. Like this is skincare that really works. This stuff packs a punch. And I just love getting to geek out over all the science and all the research they've done. They did a third-party 12-week clinical study, and their OS01 face was clinically proven to strengthen the skin barrier, improve skin health markers, and diminish visible signs of aging. Wrinkles were diminished in 87% of users. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. OneSkin addresses skin health at the molecular level, targeting the root causes of aging, so skin behaves, feels, and appears younger. It's time to get started with your new face, eye, and body routine at a discounted rate today. Get 15% off with the code PILLOW at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code PILLOW. After you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about them. We would love you to support Pillow Talks by letting them know that we sent you. We only have one body, one skin, and only you can choose to make it better. Age healthy with OneSkin. Okay, so how do you talk to your partner about wanting more emotional intimacy? So my first piece of advice here is to approach it in a fun and playful way. I think a lot of times when we think about making requests of our partner, it's nerve-wracking. And a lot of us get anxious, and a lot of us read meaning into the fact that our partner hasn't been doing that before. And so, we end up approaching our partner with these requests, but they feel our anxiety, and it puts them on guard and makes them get defensive and, just winds up not having a great end result for either one of you. So the bottom line is here, if you're wanting more emotional intimacy, like that's a really sweet thing. You're wanting to feel closer to your partner. That's a positive thing. You're not going to your partner and saying like, I want you to pay more taxes, or I want you
to
extreme
example.
Only eat broccoli. Like it's a positive thing that should feel fun and good to them. So like approach it in that way, especially if you don't have any indication that your partner is going to be resistant, if there's not like a lot of tension between the two of you, if it's not something you've talked about before, like don't shoot yourself in the foot by making it seem like this big, scary deal. Like go in a lighthearted, playful way.
Yeah, I mean, and also, at least initially, this is something where you can go in. It's not saying, I need X from you. It's, hey, why don't we do more of X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever. Like, I do think that, a lot of people are thinking that the request is like, I need you to do this. But this is a we thing.
Yeah, I mean,
emotional intimacy is a we problem.
That's a separate tip for sure. Like it's not something, if you're feeling like you want more emotional intimacy, it's not something that you're asking your partner to deliver to you. It's like we got to work together as a team so that we are both feeling closer to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only scenario where it eventually turns into more of a one-sided request is like if this is something that you've been trying to work on for a long time. You've had a number of conversations. You've made plans together about here's how we are going to kind of conquer this challenge together. And it is, you're holding up your end of the bargain and your partner's increasingly not. And eventually, but this is getting into almost more like ultimatum territory where it's like, I need this from you or else like I can't do this.
So going back to, the original piece of advice about like approaching it in a fun and playful way, one of my general pieces of advice for anytime you're making a request of your partner is to lead with the kind of energy that you want your partner to have. So if you go in there making it seem like happy and exciting and you're looking forward to it, like your partner's going to pick up on that energy versus you leading with like, hey, so we need to talk about something, it's like really been bothering me for a long time. Like that's just going to lead to a challenging conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost think of it just kind of like the same energy that you might come to your partner with if you want to ask them on a date or something. When you want to go on a date, you're not like, we need to go to dinner so that we can talk.
Yeah.
Like that sounds real bad, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to go on a date, it's like, hey, this awesome new restaurant opened up. Like, let's go. I made a reservation this weekend. Let's do it. It's going to be really fun, right? And like, this is a fun, exciting opportunity for you to get to do something that you know is going to make you feel closer.
Yeah. You can also use this podcast to open up a conversation. So if you're feeling nervous about this, like you can literally say to your partner, hey, I was listening to this week's episode of Pillow Talks. They were talking about emotional intimacy. And you know what? It got me thinking. There were some great ideas. So that way you don't have to go in again saying something like, hey, we need to talk. And, there's this thing that you're not doing for me. Like use this to open the conversation. Even listen to this episode together with them. Our next tip is to make specific requests. So just saying to your partner, like, I want us to be closer or I want us to have more emotional intimacy. Like
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that is so hard to follow through on because like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? And the bottom line is emotional intimacy is totally different in different relationships. Like something that could feel very intimate to you could feel not at all intimate to another couple. And so it's not setting your partner up for success to just say, I want to be closer. In fact, it's probably likely to make them panic, get anxious, bury their head in the sand, not want to try anything at all. Like it's not a request. So instead, you have to think about what are small and practical ways that the two of you can start working towards emotional intimacy. So a lot of the things that we were listing earlier are
Vanessa, okay, you guys didn't hear this. I didn't do anything. You didn't hear this, but Vanessa, we just had 2 takes twice in a row where Vanessa kept saying, we were listening earlier instead of listing. And then she really got in her
I got
head.
in my head and then you were looking at me and I thought I did it right. Then I was like, did I say listening again?
You absolutely did it right. You did it great.
We were listing things that are signs of emotional intimacy. And some of them are big things, right? Like this feeling of being truly seen and understood by each other. Like that's not a request you can make of your partner. Like, I would like you to see me more. I would like you to understand who I am on a core level, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I heard that, I would be like, ooh, honestly, that would feel like a big like red flag. Like, ooh, like what? 1, that doesn't mean a lot to me. And 2, if you are saying that, there's probably fundamentally something wrong or missing in our relationship. And so I would be like, oh, wait, how serious? This sounds really serious, but also not serious enough that you're coming to me with any specifics. So I'm confused.
Yeah. So it's going to require you to spend a little bit of time thinking, like, what are some small and practical requests that I can make of my partner that will eventually, over time, with repetition, lead to more emotional intimacy. So, for example, it could be something like, I'd like for us to have 1 phone-free dinner per week, or every dinner phone-free. Or I'd love us to go on a nightly walk around the block. Like something practical. And again, it's like, it's not that 1 walk around the block, all of a sudden there's so much emotional intimacy, but it's that you're creating steps to give to your partner, steps that are eventually going to lead to feeling closer to each other. Another tip is to ask your partner if they're aware of what makes them feel close to you. So again, like this is not you going into your partner and saying, here are all the things that you need to change and fix to make me feel better. It's letting your partner know, like you want to feel closer to them and you want to do whatever they need for you to My brain is short circuiting. Like, you want to do things for them that will make them feel close to you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You did. You did. It was a tongue twister. And I think that's a really big one. When you kind of turn it back around of like, hey, yeah, what are the things that I could do with you that are going to make you feel closer to me, or that are going to open you up to be more vulnerable. And I think that we have to be open to the possibility that this brings up some things that might kind of turn the mirror back around on us, because I do think that what can very often happen in long-term relationships is like, yeah, let's say like one partner has a hobby or something that their partner's not really into. And I'm really clear. I'm not talking about our relationship. You do a really great job of this when it comes to surfing, but like, I'll use surfing as an example. I love to surf. Obviously, I talk about this all the time. Vanessa really could care less about surfing, other than the fact that she has a husband who, really loves it. Vanessa doesn't go out of her way to know anything about surfing or follow professional surfing or anything like that, because it's not something that she does. It's not important to her. So say that like early on in our relationship, I'd come back from surfing and be like, trying to tell her about how it was or something that I was struggling with. And, if she had been like, like I don't, this doesn't really mean anything to me, or like, why don't you go like talk to your surf buddy about this or something like this? Like, because I think this happens a lot in relationships where someone has a hobby or something, and, maybe they feel a little self-conscious about their hobby as well. And, they try being vulnerable a couple of times and sharing more about that with their partner, or seeing if their partner might want to get a little bit involved in it, and their partner shuts them down. I think this is a super common thing that happens. And I think also this is more of a like men with hobbies thing. It's like more often the guy has a hobby, and this feels super vulnerable to him. That is like kind of letting his partner into this thing that he really loves. He kind of feels shut down. And so he might feel like, oh, well, like, the way that I'm trying to be vulnerable with you is not being reciprocated. And so I think that this is like great to be aware of, like, yeah, like this might mean re-examining your own history in your relationship and being like, are there any ways that I have kind of inadvertently shut down opportunities for vulnerability, or, ways that I could be, more open to seeing my partner fully, even if the thing is like, I'm not interested in it, or I'm not really into it, because that can just go such a long way.
Okay, so let's talk about what to do if you've tried talking to your partner about emotional intimacy and they are just not understanding it. So some common responses that we hear are, I don't know how to do that. So we hear this most commonly from men who are in relationships with women. So this does go back to what I was saying before about why it's important to give your partner specifics. Because again, like if you're just going to them and saying, hey, I want you to be more intimate with me, like of course they're going to say, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is if you hear that from your partner, get really, honest with yourself of, was the request that I made specific enough? Because it's very likely that it was broad enough or general enough that, it's more along the lines of like, I want us to feel closer. But if, I feel like it is possible that you give a really specific request. The top one that comes to mind for me is, if you're talking about like, I'd like to have more deep and meaningful conversations, because we told you that was, one way to really have a lot more emotional intimacy. So if you go to your partner and say, I want to have more deep and meaningful conversations, they might reasonably say, oh, I don't really know how to do that. I'm not very comfortable with that. Though I do think you could be even more specific about that. You don't even need to suggest that. You could suggest doing an activity that will maybe facilitate more conversations, and you take it upon yourself to try to like have some good conversational topics that might draw out some more meaningful conversations.
I also think this could be the opportunity to talk about each of your histories with emotional intimacy. So like if you were raised in a family that didn't have very much emotional intimacy, you didn't talk about your feelings for each other, you didn't say I love you, you didn't talk about deeper feelings. Yeah, like this is a lot of people. Like, of course you're not going to know how to do that. And there can be a lot of shame and embarrassment that comes up around this. Like, I think a lot of us know that we should be able to have emotional intimacy, but it feels embarrassing to not know how to. So taking a step back and talking about it in a broader sense, like, what does emotional intimacy mean to you? And what did you learn about it growing up? Did you feel like you got emotional intimacy from your parents? Did you have it in your early relationships and your friendships? I mean, that's an especially interesting question to ask of men, because men really struggle with having emotional intimacy in friendships. But yeah, just like having that conversation. So, and that's the funny thing about having that conversation, is that's building emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
You're getting to know each other better, getting to understand your history, the challenges that come up for you. So it's a little secret tip within the tip. Okay, another common response that we hear, again, usually from men, is, I'm just not good at talking about feelings. Xander, do you have any thoughts, insights into the male mind? Why would a man say he's not good at talking about feelings?
Well, from a very early age, men have been told and shown that they should not be expressing their feelings, or that they should be actively suppressing their feelings. I feel like I've told this story a million times, but I mean, I feel like most men have at least one story like this early on in their memory. You know, like, I was playing baseball at like 4 years old, got tagged out, slid, sliced my knee open pretty good. Like, I ended up going, I didn't need stitches, but I needed like a big bandage for a long time. And, you know, blood pouring out of my knee, and I'm crying. And, you know, I just distinctly remember, I still remember this kid's name even. That's how much it's seared in my memory. Standing over me. He's my age, by the way. Same age, same class. And he's like, big boys don't cry. And, you know, it's like, you know, that shit gets in so deep so early on. So you learn, oh, I'm not supposed to cry. I'm not supposed to express emotion. Combine that with, you know, very often, you know, you just talked about like many families don't show very much emotional intimacy. You know, so yeah, plenty of men will be from families like that. But also, most men, you know, whether they have a family that shows a lot of emotional intimacy or not, most, you know, men in maybe his relationship with his father likely has less emotional intimacy, because it's two men who have both been told by society that they shouldn't display much emotion. So it's sort of like this double whammy. Even if you're in a very emotionally intelligent family, the men may not have very close emotional relationships with each other regardless. And they've already been shown that they shouldn't be showing it.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of different responses you can say here. Like, you can try to have a bigger conversation about that. Like, just what I talked about a second ago about, like, well, I don't know how to do that. You can talk about their history around that. You could say something like, I'm not expecting you to be good at it, but I just want us to try it a little bit more too. Because like, I think people get in their heads about like, I'm not good at it. Like, what does that even mean, to be good at talking about feelings? You know, so that's another way to phrase it with your partner. It's like, I don't need you to be good at it. I don't even know what good at it means, but it makes me feel closer to you when I get to hear all the different emotions that you're expressing. Another thing to say could be reminding them that they actually do talk about emotions. I think a lot of us get in our heads thinking like, I'm not good at this, but the reality is we talk about emotions pretty much every day. Like, oh, I had such a bad day at work today, or I was so frustrated about this thing, or I got really annoyed at this thing. So reminding your partner of like, oh, that's interesting that you think that way, because I actually see you talk about emotions a lot. Like, just the other day you were telling me about da-da-da. You know, so kind of reminding them like, you do this, you know how to do it.
Yeah, no, if your male partner is into sports, this is probably the best way. The best way in. You can be like, hey, I know you might not recognize this, but I see you express a lot of emotion around, you know, insert their sports team right there. Hey, just last week when so-and-so lost, I was about to name a team that, based on the team that I like, I would be very happy if they lost. I didn't do that, though. I'm not going to do that. But like, you know.
Okay, weirdo. Just say it. Drag them.
No. But no, it's like, yeah, hey, when your team lost, like, I noticed you talking about, you know, how bummed or sad you were, and you maybe felt angry about X, Y, and Z. And it's
back
like,
with the angry again.
or they won. Hey, you were so happy, and you were talking about it. And I think that it's just reminding them that is talking about your feelings. Think about what that feels like. It might even be helpful to be like, hey, imagine what it's like when your team loses, or when someone got injured, or, or when they won the championship, whatever it is, and kind of walking them through like, oh yeah, like I can talk about that. I know what that's like. And it's like, yeah, so this is the same thing. It's just applying that to other things that happen in life.
Okay, another common response. I think it's fine. Oh, God, it's such such a stonewalling kind of reaction. Like you're trying to just cut the conversation off right there. So the phrase that I always have in my back pocket for this is, I'm glad that it feels fine for you. You and me are a team. And when something matters to one of us, it should matter to both of us. So you're letting them have their experience. If they feel like there's plenty of emotional intimacy, that's fine. You don't get to completely deny their experience or say like, you can't possibly. That's just going to make them more defensive and more shut down. So be like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm glad it feels that way for you. It's not feeling that way for me though. And I think, as a partnership, this is the agreement that we make, that when something matters to one of us, it matters to both of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if like one partner always cooks like the same meal every week and they love it, and you don't like it, like it, or like even in like worst case scenario, like it makes you kind of sick or something. Ooh. Like it would be totally unreasonable of your partner to be like, well, I like it, so I'm just going to keep making it, right? Like we tend to modify the things that we do so that we are, when it comes to eating, like we're not making stuff that we actively dislike regularly just because the other person likes it, right? So like, why would we do that in our, in our relationship?
And I'll also say, like, I just think it's so important to keep returning to, like, this is a positive thing. I love you. I want to get to know you better. I want to see you more. Like, it's not an insult or anything like that. It's I want to see more of you. The more I know about you, the more I love you.
All right. And then finally, this is a good one, Vanessa. You ask for, something along the lines of wanting more emotional intimacy, and your partner turns it around and goes, well, I want more sex. What the heck do you do then?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing these 2 episodes back to back, because we do think both physical and emotional intimacy are equally important. We'll talk about this more next week, but I think there is this tendency to think of sex, just this physical act, when it really is an incredible act of intimacy. So this is probably, you're getting this in a snarky, like defensive, like, well, I want more sex. And this really points to like the classic standoff that couples get into of like, well, I want to feel close to you before we have sex, but the way I feel close to you is by having sex. It just feels like this huge standoff. So I think the key here is to validate your partner and say like, yeah, I want us to have more physical intimacy too. Or, I'm glad that you are wanting to feel closer to me in that way. Like, at the end of the day, most couples want both things, right? Like we want to feel, more of both. We want to feel more emotional intimacy. We want to feel more physical intimacy. And so rather than fighting over, well, whose thing gets to come first, is recognizing like, hey, we both want more of both things. So let's work together as a team to make sure we're both getting the both things that we need.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be as simple of a response as like, hey, that's great news. I think that we can both get more of each of these things if we just do a couple of simple things.
We know that as you've been listening to this episode, this might be feeling really challenging. I mean, let's be real, like creating more emotional intimacy, it is difficult. Like so many of us are struggling with it for a reason. And it can feel very challenging to try to figure out your own path of getting there when there are so many like big questions that come up. So the good news is, we have your back. We have something incredibly exciting that we are running just for the next couple of weeks that will give you a step-by-step, concrete and specific game plan to creating more emotional and physical intimacy. And it is sweet or spicy.
Yeah, so sweet or spicy, it combines our 2 most loved challenges. So that's the connection challenge and the sex challenge to help you reignite that honeymoon phase spark and get back to feeling closer than ever before.
So the connection challenge is your specific path towards creating more emotional intimacy, while the sex challenge is your path for creating more physical intimacy. So you can choose here, like what are you wanting more of in your relationship right now? But But ultimately, we do think that most relationships would benefit from both. So rather than sweet or spicy, it can be sweet and spicy.
Yeah, that's the move. So let me tell you how it works. You can start the challenges whenever you want, either challenge. Each one will send you 30 unique emails with 2 quick yet very powerful activities that are designed to increase intimacy, whether that's physical or emotional, between you and your partner. So we're talking like 10 to 20 minutes for each challenge, and they're really designed to be as doable as possible. Plus, the really cool thing is that you get to choose your own pace. Like, you can do these whenever you want, totally up to you. Like, you want to do it once a week? Awesome. Every few days? Even better. Whatever feels good to you.
So if you go sweet with the connection challenge, your 2 daily options are going to include a communication activity. So this is a thought-provoking question or discussion prompt that ranges from fun and flirty to deep and meaningful. You'll also get an action activity. So this is a short, playful activity you and your partner complete together.
All right, now if you get spicy with the sex challenge, each day you're going to receive a sensual activity. So this is like an activity that's based around communication, touch, or maybe even foreplay because, hey, honestly, sometimes the hottest moments happen when your clothes are still on. And then a sexual activity. So this is an R-rated assignment, but I want to be really clear, it is not just intercourse, contrary to popular opinion.
So you can get either challenge individually for $129, or you can get both for only $199. That's a massive discount because we really want to encourage couples to go all in and get both. And we want to give you a very important heads up. This is actually going to be the very last time we do sweet or spicy. We have done it for years now. If you've been around for a long time, you might have also known it as intimate or nasty. That was our original name. But we are going to stop offering the challenge in these formats. We're making some changes to our business, trying to simplify things. We are retiring a lot of our guides and courses, even the super popular ones. So if you want a chance to do sweet or spicy, this is your absolute last chance before we close it down.
Yeah, so discover more about the Sweet or Spicy Challenge by heading to the show notes of this episode, or you can just go over to vmtherapy.com/sweet or spicy. And on that note, that is it for today's episode of Pillow Talks. Thank you so much for listening. Join us again next week when we deliver the other side of the coin to this one, which we are already telling you about. We will be doing an episode all about physical intimacy and how to get more physical intimacy. Emotional intimacy? What the heck is that even?
Yes, we will discuss that.
Oh, I was trying to tee you up.
Wait, what?
Because the next thing is, what is emotional intimacy? Oh, girl.
Okay, sorry.